Hello, everybody. Your homework for today is going to be listening to this video lecture um, that I'm going to be starting here. So we spent the past few days talking about really the background of the Cold War. Like, what is it? Who's involved? Korean War, nuclear war. Now we're going to focus more on, okay, what was going on here at home in the 40s and 50s. That'll be our next focus for the next couple days. So this part is not your guys' guided notes, I don't think, at least. But obviously, you have a lot of key things that are going to start happening. As I think I mentioned to you guys before, the 50s and the 60s were just very chaotic times in the United States. You had so much going on, so much social and cultural revolution, conflict. Just think about what's going on today. Obviously, with what you guys saw with the Capitol riots, you had race riots, and it was very similar, but to a whole new level. So a couple of themes that we'll talk about: the baby boom was a big part of it. A lot of babies being born during this time, which will have a huge impact on population growth. Civil rights movement was going on. The United States are become much more involved in the world, as you'll see with Korea and Vietnam, the Middle East, different CIA operations. The creation of Israel is going to happen after World War II, which will be a major source of anger, especially in Middle Eastern countries that will cause a lot of conflict, even with terrorism and things that we find today in today's world was really started from there. And then obviously you have tensions that are going to rise between China, United States, and North Korea, and Russia, Iran, Iraq. That all stem from really this time period. All right, so one thing I want to get to, this is kind of what's going to be getting into our guided notes now. So as I just alluded to, post-World War II, you have a huge population growth in the United States. Basically, the men come home from war. Um, they haven't had the company of women in a long time. They settle down, and they have lots and lots of babies. And also, too, you got to understand, the technology increases at the time. People had more money, more middle class jobs. Um, People had more resources now to have more children than what they maybe did before in the 20s or 30s. Plus, you got to understand these people were suffering the Great Depression. All throughout the 30s, you had World War II, all the sacrifices that they had to make. Now they can kind of enjoy life, and they have more money to spend. And so, a couple of interesting things. So, basically, guys, you may have heard the term baby boomers, or I don't know, the big thing on social media when you see an older person, okay, boomer. But that describes the differences between children that were born after World War II between 1945 and 1964. Those people are called baby boomers. So if my dad was born in 1960, he'd be part of the baby boom generation. My mom, same thing, born in 64. She's a part of the baby boom generation. Here's obviously a couple of stats for you guys. In 1947, there's a baby born in the United States every 7 seconds. 75 million babies were born by the end of the 50s. So again, our population went from here to here. It soared big time. Now again, think about this. We learn our lesson after World War One. Remember the bonus army that will march upon Washington D.C. and Herbert Hoover will unleash the military on them. Well, we learned our lesson. We got to find ways in how we can prepare and support our troops after their service. So in 1944, Congress will help pass the GI Bill. Guys, this is still in effect today, still around today. Many members of the military they benefit from this, but basically it's a relief program for military members. It helps them readjust to civilian life. These programs go towards job training to help give training to our soldiers, education. They can go to college or vocational school. Medical treatments. There's VA hospitals, Veteran Affairs hospitals, all over the country, to where veterans can go and get treatment. They get loans for housing, like low interest loans. They get low interest loans for starting their own businesses. So those are some different perks they get, again for their service. But again, it helps them readjust. All right. So we kind of talk about this during the Gilded Age. You kind of have this progression in the United States where you have think about the beginning part of class. Pre-industrialization, you have most people live on the farms. Okay, industrialization hit. Boom, factories and cities. Boom. Now people are moving from farms to cities. Most people live now in cities by the 1920s. Now you have this next social or this next movement, migration of Americans, where now they start moving from cities to suburbs. Um, so as you see, like Brook Park, Berea, Parma will start becoming, huge portions. Nothing about why. We'll talk about why here in a minute. But you move to suburbs, you might get better schools, bigger yards, safer, less crime. So you start seeing more of that, more of like the flight, leaving cities, going out to inner ring suburbs and outer ring suburbs. All right, so as I said, internal migrations. Internal migration is basically just the movements of Americans. This is going to be a big part of your guys' state test. They're going to ask some questions on this, so just be prepared for it, understanding the migration patterns of Americans. So you see, again, moving from city to suburbs will be the next migration. So again, country to city, and then city to suburb. So there are several reasons for why this came to be, but one was a housing shortage. The population started getting so large that we simply just couldn't house everybody um, in a satisfactory manner in cities. And with the increases in technology, cars, etc., people started to branch out and move outside the city. But there was more space. Where you actually had a front yard, you had a backyard. Think about it. If you have ever been to New York City or Chicago, you don't have yards in downtown areas. Well, if you go to a suburb, most suburbs have a front yard. They have a backyard. They have more parks. So the first suburb was created in New York. It was called a Levitt Town because of the Levitt Company. There was a construction company called Levitt. So they called these towns Levitt Towns. Guys, you can kind of look at this street here. It's kind of hard to see. I know it's a little blurry, but all the houses look the same. It was basically, guys, it was like factories, but turned that into making houses. They were created boom, 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 boom. So if you've ever been to Parma, Brook Park, Berea, Lakewood, guys, all the houses looked exactly the same. They're little bungalows. They were built very quickly to accommodate the need and the demand for housing. So again, why was this created? Again, you had several reasons. You had the interstate highway system under the New Deal that was being created, so people can now move and take the roads from downtown to the suburbs a lot more quicker. It linked different areas. Better cars, more cars are more affordable. Get rise in middle class jobs became a big deal. The population boom. There simply just wasn't enough room in downtown areas, so we needed to just kind of sprawl out. And here's like more like the negative reaction, but this is just reality during the times. You had something called white flight. You basically had more minority groups, more immigrants living in downtown, and quite frankly, a lot of the white Caucasian populations didn't want to live next to um, different um, different races. So they wanted to go out to the suburbs and move away from the diversity, I guess, to less diverse areas. So that was just a reality in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. It was something that was a real called white flight. So the next internal, and I know there's no writing on this, so I'm going to tell you in terms of your guided notes. So the next internal migration will be going from Rust Belt. Now, what's the Rust Belt? The Rust Belt is in the red up here. So Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, New York, Boston. This is areas where once was very heavy manufacturing, steel. Well, after World War II, guys, there was less demand for steel anymore. The war is over. Countries in Europe weren't needing it. A lot of the cities and infrastructure was already being built. So a lot of the factories went dormant, and people were laid off and lost their jobs. So people began moving from this Rust Belt area into the Sun Belt. Atlanta, the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, Arizona, Las Vegas, Oregon, Washington. Where the Sun Belt, where it's sunny. It's sunny in the southern states, where more jobs and were growing and becoming more demand. So that was the next internal movement. I'll skip that. All right, then other thing would be the economy and technology. You had the economic boom in the beginning part of the 50s. People had more money to spend, the rise of middle class, and it also created new jobs because of automation. Machines will basically take over the jobs of new industrial jobs. So yes, manufacturing jobs will be lost, but it's going to create new jobs in technology. Guys, no different from what's going on today. The whole idea of solar energy and going green, um, you know, back in the day, oil producers and coal producers, um, when they started shutting down some of these coal factories and coal mines, they're like, oh, we're losing our jobs. Yeah, but that's also going to create other jobs in like wind power, solar power, etc. Um, Same goes for like having machines. I know I've seen these kiosks at McDonald's that will take the order instead of people. Okay, well now you need people to fix those machines and make those machines, so that creates jobs in other areas. Another big thing would be marketing and advertising. Now with the rise of the TV in the 50s and 60s, you can expand the marketing agencies, expand advertising, make commercials, which would be big business, but will also help these businesses grow as well. Um, Something else too, something called franchising. Franchising is when companies begin to license out their products to individuals. So think of McDonald's. McDonald's, you have the creator, and what he's going to do is he's gonna create franchises where people can buy in McDonald's and can create their own stores. So McDonald's, you can buy McDonald's, you can start up your own McDonald's if you have enough capital and money to do so. Burger King, same thing. Taco Bell. They start off as one company, and then eventually people can buy in, can franchise it out. That's what a franchise means. So this allows more stores to pop up, allows investors, allows people to basically make their products for them. Um, so yeah. Um, Also, rise of business. Also, too, you have again baby boomers. So a lot of kids being born. So now you need more kid products, Play-Doh and this potato head. This looks freaky, doesn't it? Barbie dolls, toys. So again, you need people to make those things, advertise those things. That's going to create more middle class jobs. Again, you need schools. More schools are going to prop up. So um, again, paying with credit, moving to the suburbs. You'll have more money to spend on these things. Um, Society. So the big thing about back in the 50s, you can both watch a video on this, but the idea of conformity, to conform. So you see this picture here. People back then, you got to understand that this was the World War II generation. These men came home from war. They were used to dressing the same, having the same haircut. So they took that mentality into the workforce, and they all wore ties. They wore suits. This is kind of what they did. They blended in. They fit in. That was just they kind of lost individuality. You lost that free thinking. You're supposed to just kind of blend in and fit in. That's kind of what companies wanted, a team player, so to speak. Again, pop culture was big back in this time period. You have, the sock hops. If you've ever seen the movie Grease before, I assume you have. If not, then I don't know where you've been living. But Grease is a very popular movie that really portrayed the 50s culture, the music, the sock hops, the fashion, the slang language. Rock and roll was developed in this time, the 50s. You go to the drive-in movie theaters and the jukebox. It's all 50s culture. That's kind of what you saw like in the mass media and on TV and on the radio. You have, I Love Lucy, sort of the gender roles. She really pushed the limit for gender roles. With I Love Lucy, with a female lead, which was very difficult back then for females to be the lead of the show. Group 1, you are dismissed. But women had a very similar experience after World War I. A lot of women were expected to basically be the housewife, and a lot of the media, a lot of the TV shows back then portrayed them as being housewives. A lot of them had teacher, nurses, secretary types of things, unfair treatment at work, made less money. There was sexism, sexual harassment within the workplace. So a lot of women basically took a step backwards after the war. Again, there still were more opportunities compared to decades past, but there still were a lot of issues. And as you see here, this was actually taught to kids in school. This was like a page from a textbook on how to be a good housewife, having dinner ready for your husband, prepare yourself, clear away the clutter, prepare the kids. Again, it's brainwashing young women that they were supposed to be, be lower compared to the men. And then obviously you have your fashion, you have different cultural groups. You have the beatniks, which is more like your artsy kind of people, your poets. You had your teddy boys, which were more the preppies back then. Then you had your preppies here, and then you had your greasers, which were more like the tough, rumble tumble kind of people. The teddy boys were more like the musical people. Then you had your poodle skirts, and you had your flower designs, and you had some more of the greaser look with the smoking cigarettes, the slick back hair, that kind of thing. So, all right. So anyway, that is it for today. make sure you copy all this stuff in your notes.